My life changed when my billionaire mom refused to accept my curvy love, until she saw this. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It was supposed to be joyful, but instead, it spiraled into chaos. I felt it in the air, a thick, suffocating silence that wrapped around me like a clingy vine. My heart thundered in my chest as I stood in the grand hallway of our mansion, every opulent painting glaring down at me. I was about to introduce Jacob, the love of my life, to my wealthy family. Jacob was not just my boyfriend, he was my lifeline. His laugh had a way of wrapping around me, warming the coldest parts of my soul. But he didn't fit the mold of the perfect son-in-law my mother envisioned: tall, lean, buttoned up. He was curvy, with a softness that felt so genuine. Standing next to him, I felt grounded. But as I looked at my mother's tight expression, I knew the baggage he carried in her eyes was about to tear us apart. "Look at this," she said, her voice sharp and chilling. My hands trembled as I stood there, helpless, listening to her dissect him like a specimen under glass. "This isn't what our family represents." I could see the fury building in her eyes, the disapproval simmering since the day we met. Our connection, our laughter, all seemed to fade as I watched the warmth drain from Jacob's face. That I thought of all the times had encouraged me to love myself, to embrace my curves. How could she not see the light he brought into my life? It was as if we were in a twisted play, with my mother directing the scene with cold, unyielding criticism. Every ounce of hope felt like it was slipping away. The air was heavy around us, thick with resentment and disbelief. And in that moment, I realized I had to choose. But how could I let go of Jacob? Why should love ever make me choose? I glanced at him. His soft eyes held mine, filled with confusion and fear, a silent plea echoing between us. He was everything. But was I willing to fight my own blood to keep him? Suddenly, the tension broke when my mother finally asked a question that shook me to my core. "What if I could make you a deal? A chance to change your life with just a simple choice." My breath hitched. What did she mean? The threat hung in the air, heavy and ominous. My heart raced faster than ever, the stakes higher than I could ever imagine. I was torn. Was I ready to uproot everything I believed in for a chance to make her accept us? Or was I ready to stand up against her, unyielding, frightening her with the truth of my love? Everything was about to change, and I didn't know if I was strong enough to face it. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence hung heavy as I stood frozen, my pulse echoing in my ears. My mother's proposition hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and foreboding, threatening to consume everything I held dear. Jacob glanced at me uncertainly, his eyes brimming with a mixture of love and anguish. I could feel the weight of his gaze, urging me to respond, to make sense of the chaos unfurling around us. "Mom, what kind of deal are you talking about?" My voice quavered, the words barely escaping my lips. I wanted to stand my ground, but the coldness of her expression clawed at my insides. What did she think she could offer that would ever change how I felt about Jacob? She leaned forward, her fingers steepled beneath her chin, and the flicker of a smirk crossed her face. "Imagine a life where you don't have to struggle. A life where everything you desire is within reach. You could have it all, but you must let go of this misguided notion of love." She gestured dismissively towards Jacob, a clear indication he was the anchor pulling me down. That my heart wrangled with her words, battling against all the love that had blossomed between us, all the moments where Jacob had made me feel fierce and beautiful. "You don't even know him," I retorted, my voice growing steadier, fueled by an unexpected surge of defiance. "You haven't bothered to understand who he is," she scoffed, leaning back against the plush leather chair like my words had no weight. A family could never survive built on delusions, dear. And do you think love will pay the bills? It won't help you gain respect or power. The tension thickened again, choking me as I struggled to breathe. The notion of sacrificing my love for status was subtly seductive, yet it left a bitter taste in my mouth. Jacob took a half-step towards me, and I saw his jaw clench, his self-doubt surfacing as he tried to mask the hurt. I would not let my mother's cold insistence tear us apart. Jacob is not a delusion. He's my reality, my safe haven. I shouted, the words spilling out like a broken dam. You've taught me that love is everything, but it seems you only believe in the kind of love that fits your ideals. The silence after my outburst was deafening. My mother's eyes flickered for a moment. Did I catch a glimpse of vulnerability in her gaze? Or was it merely the flicker of fury beneath her polished exterior? Choices, she reminded me with a quiet menace that curled around her words. It's all about choices, my dear. This is a fork in the road. Choose wisely. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Choosing Jacob over my family would mark a line I couldn't uncross. What kind of life would I create with someone who could never be accepted by my mother? Would I force him to endure the constant weight of my family's disdain? The fear sunk into my stomach as a new challenge emerged, stronger than before, the battle within myself. Turning away from my mother's piercing gaze, I fled to the garden, needing the escape of fresh air. Night had fallen, draping the world in a blanket of stars, each twinkling light feeling like a distant promise of hope against the tumult of my heart. Jacob followed closely, his footsteps gentle and cautious. Hey, he said, his voice soothing but laced with concern. You okay? I couldn't bring myself to meet his gaze. I feared what he might see reflected in my eyes. What if there's no way out of this? What if being with you costs me everything? I can't lose you, but I can't stand to see you hurt either. He took a step closer, his warmth enveloping me, grounding me in uncertainty. Love shouldn't feel like a choice, should it? I don't ever want to be the reason you're torn apart from your family. But I need you to understand. His voice faltered slightly, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his confidence. I love you, and I will fight for us, but I can't do it alone. I need to know you're in this with me. In that moment, I realized the gravity of our situation. The power of love weighed heavily against the forces threatening to consume us. Every day felt like a fight for our very existence. My heart ached, caught between what I wanted and the world I was born into. Suddenly, a single thought pierced through my turmoil. What would my mother do next? The uncertainty looming over us was like a knife at my throat, ready to cut through the fragile ties connecting our world to hers. As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket, pulling me from the depths of despair. It was a text from Mom. Meet me tomorrow morning. We need to talk. My breath hitched as panic surged within me. What did she want now? What further plans did she have in store? I turned to Jacob, but I saw the same fear mirrored in his eyes as he watched me read the message. The next morning felt like it would either become our salvation or the final nail in our coffin. Whatever they throw at us, we can face it together, he said, his voice firm yet tender. But a part of me knew we were now standing on the edge of a cliff, teetering in the balance, unsure of what lay beneath. Would our love survive, or would it shatter against the harsh realities awaiting us? The sun rose with an insipid glow, an unwilling participant in the tumult of my heart. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thoughts spiraling around the meeting that lay ahead. Every tick of the clock resonated like a slow, relentless drum, echoing my anxiety. I didn't know what my mother would demand this time, or if it would lead me further down a path I couldn't return from. Jacob's presence was a comforting weight next to me, but even his warmth struggled to penetrate the frost of dread I felt. I lay motionless, wrestling with the turmoil in my mind. What should I do if she pushed me? If she didn't merely threaten to deny me but took real actions that could harm Jacob? The morning air was crisp as I stepped outside, the dew still lingering on the grass. I felt disconnected from the world, but as soon as my feet hit the ground, Jacob materialized beside me, a steadfast companion in my war against uncertainty. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice both encouraging and apprehensive. Everything rested on this confrontation, and the stakes felt impossibly high. No, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I ever will be. As we made our way to my mother's house, a quiet strength flowed between us. It was like a thin thread binding my resolve to his unwavering support. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I held on to that thread, knowing it would guide me to speak my truth, whatever that truth might be. When we arrived, the massive gates of my mother's estate loomed over us like a foreboding omen. The manicured gardens, full of vibrant colors, felt surreal against the weight of the looming confrontation. But as I took a deep breath and stepped inside, I felt a flicker of hope. Jacob squeezed my hand gently, reminding me that I was not alone in this battle. The grand living room was immaculate, as always, but today it felt cold and sterile. My mother was waiting, her posture rigid and her expression betraying no emotion. As I sat across from her, I could feel Jacob's presence just behind me, like a shield guarding my heart. "I am glad you came," she began, her tone deceptively smooth. "I want you to understand how important it is to make the right choice. Your future depends on it." "What do you mean?" I snapped, unable to contain my frustration. "What kind of future do you envision if I have to sacrifice my happiness? If you love me, why can't you accept who I choose?" "I love you enough to know that fleeting feelings will not sustain you," she replied, her voice tinged with a mixture of sadness and determination. "You may not realize it now, but I am protecting you from a life of potential failure." "Jacob, he can't offer you what you need." Anger bubbled to the surface, creating a storm within me. "You don't know him. You refuse to see him for who he truly is. He has fought for us, while you've only tried to tear us apart." The tension crackled in the air, but my mother didn't waver. Instead, she leaned closer, eyes narrowing. "I would do anything for your happiness, even if that means making difficult choices on your behalf. Consider this: what lengths are you willing to go to maintain this relationship? What sacrifice will you make?" My heart thudded in my chest, realizing for the first time that I was standing at a precipice. I could feel Jacob's discomfort, the weight of his desire to protect me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a small object glisten on the tablet, a thin bracelet resting silently among the polished coasters. It was a gift from my grandmother, a symbol of our bond as a family. Suddenly, a memory surged forth, my grandmother's loving voice: "Never lose who you are in the battle for love. You must fight for the ones you cherish, but don't forget to love yourself, too." The words rang with newfound clarity. "Mom, if you truly loved me, you would trust me to make my own decisions," I said, my voice gaining strength. "I will fight for my happiness alongside Jacob." You may see this as a simple disagreement, but it's about more than just love. It's about respect, about being truly known and accepted. Life is filled with uncertainties, and sometimes the person you choose to love can surprise you in ways you never imagined. Just as I felt the tide shift, Jacob's hand pressed firmly on my shoulder, igniting a fire within me. I dared to look at him, and in his eyes, I saw the promise of resilience mixed with fear yet bursting with an unwavering belief in our bond. My mother's stern gaze finally faltered. "I'll give you time," she said, her voice almost trembling. "But remember, the consequences may be larger than you think." I took a deep breath, defiance coursing through me. "Then let the storm come. I will stand with Jacob. I choose our love." But just then, the tension cracked like ice beneath our feet as my phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I pulled it out, my heart dropping as I read the message: "We need to talk about the business deal. You can't ignore this anymore." A chill ran down my spine as my mother froze, realization dawning in her eyes. "What is that?" she asked, her tone suddenly sharper, more accusatory. "Mom," I began, but the string that anchored me to hope started to fray, and the room spun around me. In that moment, the weight of expectations and fears felt heavier than ever. The questions rushed back in. What other sacrifices awaited me? Just how deep did this rabbit hole go? Would we have the strength to face what lay ahead? As my mother's eyes bore through me, I felt the delicate thread of hope snap. The silence that followed my mother's question hung thick in the air, a suffocating fog swirling with uncertainty. I felt Jacob tense beside me, his determination waving like a flag in a dark storm. The world outside seemed to fade, leaving only the weight of our collective fears and unspoken truths. Please, what is it? My mother pressed, her voice suddenly laden with an edge of desperation. What business deal? You can't simply throw away your future over a whim. The reality of her words hit me harder than I anticipated. I had been so focused on our immediate conflict that I had almost forgotten the consequences of her expectations hanging over me. More than an emotional fight, we were teetering on the brink of a transactional nightmare that could draw me deeper into her world, one I had long been trying to escape. "I won't let you dictate my life," I said, my hand instinctively gripping Jacob's tightly. The warmth of his palm grounded me, reminding me of the strength in our connection. "I'm not a pawn in your game or a trophy in your collection. I need to be able to choose my own path." "Choosing means understanding the stakes," she snapped back, a flicker of something unnameable flashing in her eyes. "You're not just representing yourself anymore. You are a part of this family legacy, and it can't be tarnished by misguided love." The word stung, wrapping around my throat like a snare. How could she fail to see the power and promise that love held? What legacy was worth maintaining if it came at the cost of my happiness? The bracelet on the table caught my eye yet again. It was simple but beautiful, just like the fragile hope I was still clinging to. My grandmother had fought her own battles, defying familial expectations to follow her heart. I suddenly felt charged with her spirit, determined to push through the fear that threatened to consume me. "Tell me what's going on with that deal," I said, my tone shifting from defensive to inquisitive. "Is there something more at stake? This feels bigger than just me and Jacob." "What lies beneath the surface?" My mother's eyes darkened, filled with a mixture of protectiveness and something else I couldn't quite place. "You have no idea what's at stake if you don't handle this correctly," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper laced with urgency. "It's not just about you. It's about everything I've built for this family. All it takes is one wrong move." My pulse quickened. "What do you mean? What are you hiding? If this deal is so critical, then I deserve to know the truth. You don't get to control my choices and keep me in the dark." My mother's expression shifted from defiance to vulnerability, but before she could respond, Jacob stepped forward, radiating an unexpected confidence. "Whatever the stakes are, you need to allow her the chance to choose her own future, even if it means risking everything. That's what love is, and that's what we're willing to fight for." Her gaze flitted between us, torn between her fierce love for her daughter and a sense of obligation to protect her empire. For a fleeting moment, I saw a glimpse of a woman who was more than just a billionaire matriarch, someone who had dreams and fears of her own. "I want what's best for you. You don't know how hard it was for me to rise above. You have to understand." Her voice cracked, revealing an unexpected fragility beneath the polished exterior. "Then let me in," I urged, stepping closer. "If we are to face this together, if I am to be part of this family legacy, then it must include honesty." She hesitated, visibly weighing the potential fallout of revealing her secrets, and in that moment, the doorbell rang, jarring us out of our tense standoff. Her expression shifted back to duty, a mask slipping into place. "Stay here," she commanded, her voice now rigid. "I'll handle this." Panic rushed within me, a gut instinct that whatever awaited on the other side of that door could tip the scale further into chaos. Suddenly, I felt Jacob's presence slip away as he moved to the window, peering outside with an urgency I couldn't explain. "What is it?" I whispered shakily, sensing his alertness. His jaw tightened. "I think you need to see this." A knot twisted in my stomach as I crossed the room to join him. Through the glass, I could see several black SUVs pulling into the driveway, their sleek forms cutting an imposing silhouette against the well-manicured lawn. A group of sharply dressed men stepped out, their demeanor exuding a seriousness that sent chills racing down my spine. My breath caught in my throat. "Who are they?" Jacob's face paled. "I have a bad feeling about this. It looks like they're here for more than just a friendly chat." before I could absorb the implications of his words, my mother emerged from the hallway, her face a mask of confusion shadowed by a fleeting glimmer of panic. "What are they doing here?" she demanded, her facade wavering under an unseen weight that I felt a sense of dread wash over me. The confrontation we had barely navigated seemed inconsequential compared to the storm brewing outside. "Mom, you need to tell me what's going on. We have to prepare for whatever this is." The words barely left my lips before the door swung open, revealing a tall man in a dark suit. "We need to discuss the partnership," he stated, his voice steady yet laced with threat. My mother stiffened, glancing back at me, as though deciding how much to disclose in that moment. Time seemed to freeze, and I felt the very thread holding our hearts together fraying once more, unraveling amidst the chaos and uncertainty. Would this be the moment everything changed? As the tension crackled in the air, I understood that the confrontation ahead would challenge not only our love but the entirety of the life I thought I knew, steering us into a territory more perilous than I imagined. My heart pounded wildly, a painful rhythm pounding in my ears. Little did we know, the choices we were about to make would shatter the fragile balance of our lives and perhaps the bonds of our love forever. The man in the suit stepped forward, his presence commanding even within the confines of our home. "We need to talk," he repeated, his eyes fixated on my mother with an intensity that felt like a spotlight narrowing its beam on her every flaw and fault line. There was something unyielding in the way he held himself, a stark contrast to the warmth I had just moments ago shared with Jacob. "Can't it wait?" my mother asked, faltering for the first time. For the first time, I saw a crack in her facade of control, a glimpse of the uncertainty that lay just beneath the surface. "This is about the deal," he snapped, impatience threading through his tone. "All right, let's talk," my mother replied, voice steadying as she took a step closer to him. But I could see the apprehension in her posture, shoulders tense, hands clenching into fists at her sides. "What deal?" I blurted out, my voice rising in desperation. "You can't just push this off on another meeting without explaining to me what's happening." "I deserve to know." The suit turned his gaze toward me, measuring the weight of my words as if assessing the threat I posed within this precarious situation. "It's not a matter of your deserving," he said coldly. "This is business, your mother's business. You should regard it as such, not when it intrudes on my life. Not when my love is involved." I replied, my voice quaking with raw emotion. In that moment of frustration, I felt as though I might burst apart, the heaviness of everything settling on my chest like a stone. That I caught Jacob's arm for support, feeling his presence amplifying my bravery. He moved closer to the edge of the conflict as if preparing to shield me from whatever might come next. "Something tells me you're not here just to discuss finances," Jacob said, voice low and calm, though the tension in his body betrayed him. "If only you were correct," the man replied with a smirk, an unsettling confidence playing on his face. "But you, Jacob, are a variable in this equation I didn't factor in." I could feel my heart racing, caught between anger and fear. "We won't let you intimidate us. This isn't just about profit margins for our lives, this is personal." A ripple of amusement passed across the suit's features, though it felt cruel. "You think this is personal? Young love? Sentiments? Every action has consequences, and your mother knows this well. This is for her legacy. I didn't sign on to this battle," my mother interrupted, voice surprisingly soft yet filled with steel. "Pointing fingers won't solve anything." The man paused, narrowing his eyes at her. "You can't negotiate your way out of this. If you don't comply, we will be forced to take action." That I felt the air grow heavy with a new urgency. We stood on the precipice of an abyss, teetering between the love I thought would save us and the unknown darkness looming just outside our front door. Fear gripped me, twisting painfully in my gut. "What do you mean, what will you do?" My voice quivered, but I stood firm. "Your mother knows precisely what's at stake," he shot back, jabbing a finger towards her, "and if the deal fails, her empire will collapse, and along with it, any future you think you have. I suggest you think carefully about your next moves." That I was shaking now, realizing for the first time that my mother wasn't the only one facing an untenable choice. I glanced at Jacob, who was watching my mother with concern, the connection that had once felt so unbreakable now tested by fear. "Mom," I pleaded, "tell us what this means. We can face it together." My mother's eyes darted to the floor, guilt etched on her face, trapping us all in a web of secrets and uncommunicated truths. The cracks in her armor deepened, shattering the illusion of the unyielding matriarch she had always projected. It's not just my future. It's yours too. I've worked hard for this," she murmured, fear mingling with remorse. Jacob spoke then, his voice unwavering despite the chaos enveloping us. "You can't let fear dictate your actions, either of you. Love is worth fighting for, even if it means standing against a tidal wave. But we need the truth to keep fighting." Just as the tension peaked, silence fell over the room. It felt like the world was collectively holding its breath. The suit's expression darkened, and without a word, he took a step back. As if sensing a disturbance in the atmosphere, he pulled out his phone, tapping impatiently. My heart raced. Was this the end? Would we be pushed over the edge? Then, without warning, the man turned to my mother, his face contorting into a grimace. "Timing is everything, and you should know there's still a way out, shouldn't you?" With that cryptic remark, he walked toward the door, discarding the threat like an empty promise. "Wait." I called out, adrenaline surging through my veins. "What do you know?" But he didn't look back, disappearing into the darkening world outside, leaving behind an oppressive silence that felt heavier than before. In that moment, I turned to my mother, a whirlwind of emotions crashing over me. "What does he mean? What's our exit?" She collapsed onto the pristine leather sofa, her composure fracturing entirely, and buried her face in her hands. "I thought I could protect you both, but the truth is I'm losing control. I don't know how to save what I've built, and am terrified of what might come next." Each word felt like a dagger in my heart. My mind raced with possibilities, a whirlwind of what could come and what had already been set in motion. But more than that, I felt a surge of determination. As darkness encroached, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of impending choices settle heavily on my shoulders. "Well, figure it out," I swore quietly to Jacob, glancing at him, sensing the fear mirrored in his expression. "But we have to face this together. No more secrets." As I made that promise, a sudden realization struck me. The stakes were higher than I could have ever imagined, and the battle that lay ahead would demand everything, even the parts of ourselves we feared to confront. The road stretched before us like an unfurling scroll, painted with unknown challenges and shadows. Just as I turned to find solace in Jacob's presence, the door echoed back, and a troubling thought lodged in my mind. Was I ready to confront not just my mother's hidden truths but my own as well? And when our love must be tested against an empire built on power and secrets, would our hearts emerge unscathed? "Together," I murmured, holding on to Jacob's hand tighter than ever, unaware that the darkness ahead would soon be illuminated with revelations that would twist our fate, challenging every heartbeat anchored in love. The room settled into a heavy silence, the shadows creeping around us as if they had heard our fears and were eager to envelop us in their cold embrace. I felt the pulse of uncertainty thrum like a heartbeat, an echo of dread against the promises we had just exchanged. Jacob's fingers interlaced with mine, steady and warm, conferring a tangible link to hope amidst our growing despair. "Together," I whispered again, though the conviction started to waver. My heart raced not just from the weight of our conversation, but from the realization that it seemed more dangerous than ever to confront my mother and the man who had just left. The question lingered, an eerie specter of doubt. What were we fighting against, and did we truly understand the nature of the battle? Before I could dwell on it too deeply, my mother's sobs pierced the quiet. The sound was raw and broken, laced with a vulnerability I'd never witnessed. Closing in, I felt the sharp pang of sorrow for this woman who had always been my rock, the one to whom I had turned in times of trouble. "Mom," I said softly, sinking to my knees beside her, desperately wanting to bridge that chasm of fear gripping her heart. That I thought she choked on her words, flush with tears. "I thought I could shield you from this, but the truth is I thought I could control everything." Each syllable forced out was laden with a city's worth of weight. "There are things I've done, choices I made to keep our lives secure, and those choices have repercussions." "Like what?" I urged gently, my heart pounding. Tell me what he meant about an exit, please. Taking a deep breath, she composed herself, wiping her tears with a trembling hand as if bracing against the vulnerabilities that had surfaced. It's a long story, and perhaps not the one you want to hear, she begun, her gaze sliding away as if the truth trailed another explosion behind it. There was an investment, something I thought I could handle without disrupting our lives. I hoped I wouldn't have to disclose the risks, but now, she paused, collecting her thoughts, there's a chance everything could crumble. The man in the suit Tobias is enforcing terms that threaten our family's stability, but Mom, how does love fit into this? My love for Jacob, you're not going to let him threaten that, are you? My words spilled out desperate, a plea bursting from deep inside at the thought of losing not just Jacob, but the core of my family too. It's your identity that's on the line, my decisions affect everyone around me, she said, her face stony yet sunken. You must understand, this is not an easy burden. I've staked so much to keep you from facing the darkness I have known. It's a weight impossible to share. The walls seemed to close tighter around us as I inhaled sharply, trying to comprehend the full scale of my mother's hidden life, the things she bore as unshared burdens. Was I to carry my own love into this dense, unyielding shadow? What if we do face the darkness together? Jacob said, his voice imbued with unexpected strength, firmly breaking through the fog of despair. What if we step into the unknown as a unit? We can create our path through this chaos rather than run from it. Looking at him then felt like a lighthouse amidst a storm, strong and steady against the odds. My resolve ignited. Here lay the very essence of love that could battle the entwining fears, but just then, the sudden shrill of my phone sliced through the air like glass shattering in silence. I leaped away from my mother, grasping the device as if it were an omen, a forewarning. The screen flashed with a message, an unknown number that sent chills racing down my spine. This wasn't any ordinary correspondence. It's from Tobias, I breathed, disbelief infusing my tone. My hands trembled as I pressed open the ominous text that if you want to take control of your future, you know where to find me. I have what you most desire, don't let fear dictate your choices. I froze, the weight of those words crashing over me. The name Tobias lingered like smoke, mingling with the acrid fear that gripped my chest, suggesting that I was standing on the precipice of far greater choices than I ever anticipated. Do you think he's serious? Jacob's question jolted me back, concern etched into his brow. We have to decide what our next words will be, where we'll draw the line, with my mother's eyes studying me intently, filled with desperation coated in pride, and Jacob's unwavering strength demanding an answer. A rush of determination coursed through me. But with it bloomed the specter of uncertainty. Was I ready to meet Tobias again, knowing the dangers that lay behind those doors? I don't know what he wants from us, I admitted breathlessly, but he clearly has the power to disrupt our lives entirely, and it frightens me. I felt the room close in around me, yet amidst that suffocating darkness, flickering hopes began to shine bright against the nothingness. If we were to survive this, transcending all that divided us, I needed to make one critical choice. Let's meet him, I finally said, my voice thick with resolve despite the tremors shadowing my heart. We'll face this together, whatever may come. Love must conquer even in a world so twisted by power. Jacob nodded slowly, while I caught a glimpse of my mother's expression morphing into one of painful acceptance. I sensed in that pivotal moment that we were set upon a dangerous path that would ultimately force us into the deepest crevices of our souls, of our love, and of choices we never thought we'd face. And as the door behind me creaked in the whispering wind outside, I knew that every heartbeat from here on out would carry the weight of what came next, leaving us stranded on the brink of uncertainty, right where fate's unscripted design began to unfold. The following days dragged into a blur, each moment laced with a tension that felt as thick as smoke. I could hardly focus on anything besides the impending confrontation with Tobias. The weight of my decision settled heavy on my chest, crescendoing into a drumroll of anxiety that echoed through my every waking moment. Every glance at Jacob left me both reassured and filled with dread. Would our love be enough to face the tempest that was coming? The thought of my mother grew more complex with each revelation. Each time I thought of her hidden truths, my understanding of her shifted like sand beneath my feet. She had been a fortress, a wellspring of unwavering love, yet I now saw her as a flawed human being, burdened by choices that had cast shadows over our lives. I needed to broach the subject with her, to untangle the threads of her fears and to let her know that I was not her fragile little girl anymore. I was part of a bigger story now, one that included Jacob. Yet, facing that conversation loomed larger than the specter of Tobias himself. That I found myself pacing in my room, the walls painted a muted shade of lavender serving as a canvas for my racing thoughts. Jacob had promised to be there, to stand by my side when I chose to confront my mother yet again. But there was something in his eyes that betrayed the calm he tried to present. He, too, was battling his own insecurities, and unspoken fears marred the space between us. On the evening before our meeting with Tobias, I mustered the courage to seek out my mother in the living room. She was perched on the edge of the sofa, her posture reflecting the weariness that wrapped around her like an old cloak. The world outside had draped itself in darkness, the only light coming through the window illuminating her face, showing the deep lines of worry and fatigue etched across it. "Mom, can we talk?" I ventured, my heart thumping loudly in my chest. She looked at me, surprise mingling with apprehension. "Of course, darling." Taking a deep breath, I sat down across from her. "I know you're scared about tomorrow, about everything that could happen if we meet with Tobias." "I am," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "This situation has so many layers and I fear for both of you. I wish I could take this burden from you, Mom." I reached out to grasp her hand, needing the warmth of her touch to anchor both of us. "You're not meant to carry this alone. I am with Jacob, and together we will confront whatever comes. But I also want to understand you better. I need to know the truth behind your decisions." Her gaze fell away from mine, focusing on her fidgeting fingers as the silence stretched taut between us. Then, she nodded, her breath trembling slightly. "Very well, but I can't promise it will be easy to hear." An entangled rush of emotions surged inside me: curiosity, fear, and a spark of hope. "I'm ready." As she began to speak, I sensed the years of pent-up emotion flooding back. She detailed her early life, her ambitions, the sacrifices made in shadows to keep us secure in the light. And within her recounting was a painful admission that left me reeling. She had once loved someone who was entangled with Tobias, someone who had sealed our family's fate in a way I could hardly comprehend now. The ties that bound us to this man went deeper than I'd imagined, shackled by betrayal and loss. "That I never wanted to put you in this position," her voice trembled. "But it's time you knew how intricate these webs of control and love can be. I did everything I thought was necessary, unaware that every choice came with its own cost." As she spoke, bitter clarity flooded the space between us. I felt a swell of empathy for a woman who had been grappling with her own ghosts while trying to shepherd me through life unscathed. But anger flared in my spine as well. "You could have trusted me more. I could have borne the weight with you." "I'm not fragile, Mom," I croaked out, frustration and hurt morphing into something combustible, burning through the remnants of our shared silence. "I didn't know how to give you the choice when I was still dealing with my own regrets," she replied softly, tears brimming in her eyes. Yet, just as I feasted on a sense of solidarity rekindled between us, an urgent knock on the door reverberated through the room, a stark interruption that sent a jolt of anxiety through our conversation. We both turned as the door swung open and Jacob stepped through, his face a mask of worry. "Is everything okay?" he asked, glancing quickly between us. I nodded, though my heart began to race once more as I caught the hint of peril in the air. "We were just talking." He stepped closer, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that felt electric. "I think you need to see this." With that, he produced his own phone, the screen illuminating a news article that filled me with a deep well of dread. The headline left no room for misinterpretation: "Prominent businessman, Tobias O'Neill, in major financial dispute." Dark secrets revealed. Tobias had been thrust into the spotlight, but it was the accompanying photo that seared into my memory: a candid shot of him entering a luxury hotel with a woman who looked eerily familiar. My heart sank as I squinted harder at the photograph. The resemblance was undeniable. "Mom," I whispered shakily, my heart wrestling with the impending realization clawing at my consciousness. "Who is she?" The color drained from her face, and the moment hung suspended as the understanding's ID just grasped transformed into something more profound, more sinister. The answer hung heavy in the air, a torrent of implications threatening to pull me under, swirling with emotions too intricate to untangle. It's complicated, she managed, her voice cracking. But I could feel the weight of the truth hovering just above us, ready to tip the balance into a spiral from which we might never return. Together, we were teetering at the edge of an abyss, our fates tangling ever tighter while the specter of Tobias kept looming over us, entwining our lives with an entanglement that could shatter us all. The air grew thick with unsaid truths, the tension amplifying as I watched my mother's face pale under the flickering light of the screen. The woman in the photo was a stranger, and yet, she wasn't. Her auburn hair framed a face that bore a striking resemblance to my mother's in you, the haunting echo of old choices made long before I was ever born. Mom, I breathed out, the words heavy on my tongue. Who is she? Tears glistened in her eyes, mirroring the confusion consuming my own. Her name was Eva. My sister. Shock clawed at my insides, rendering me momentarily mute. Sister? The word echoed like a distant bell. You never told me about her. I thought I was protecting you, she replied weakly, voice trembling. She was lost to our family in darkness I never wanted you to see. Her gaze darted to Jacob, and then back to me, a desperate plea hidden behind her pain. You don't understand how the past can bleed into the present, but that woman is tied to Tobias, I stammered, piecing the puzzle together. Was she involved in whatever happened? At that moment, Jacob stepped closer, his presence a comforting weight. What happened to her, Mrs. Nolan? Was she hurt by Tobias? My mother's hands shook as she wrapped them around her own knees, her body language betraying her distress. Tobias was married to a woman before me, a woman who came from money but was part of a criminal family. Eva died in a car accident, and, I believe, Tobias was involved somehow. Her voice faltered, as if recounting the past had whisked her back to a domain she thought she'd locked away. Died? The word slipped from my lips, leaving an ache of sorrow and disbelief. You think he caused it? I can't say for certain, she said, the walls around her heart shifting back into place, but I saw the flickering uncertainty in her eyes. But his past is stained. There are layers of truth I fear confronting. I just wish I could erase it all. As she spoke, a small ember of warmth flickered in the center of my chest, a sensation I hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity. But we have to unearth the truth, don't we? We need to know who we are facing, I insisted, emboldened by her admission. Before my mother could respond, a loud crash echoed from outside. Jacob raced to the window, peering through the sheer curtains. It's a reporter. His words were clipped, tension tightening the air anew. They're trying to get a statement from Tobias' office. Panic ripped through me, and I felt my mother's hand grip mine tightly. We can't let them get to you. Not now, she said, her voice lowering as if trying to shield us from the impending storm, but we need to prepare. If Tobias' secrets are starting to unfold, we might not have long before he retaliates in some way. Jacob whispered urgently. Was there time to escape? Time to dig through the layers of deceit? The fleeting warmth I had felt splintered, the weight of fear crashing back down upon me. I wished I could retreat to that small moment in the living room where hope had danced briefly, but as reality latched onto us with relentless claws, it became all too evident that darkness had come to threaten our tiny flame. We have to talk to Tobias, I concluded, my voice shaky, both a resolve and a challenge. You have to see him alone, my mother replied, her resolve seeming to harden. It will give you the control just like Eva once had, I think. What? I felt the ground slipping beneath me. Mom, you're not serious. He's dangerous, I know. But sometimes, facing your fears is the only way to reclaim your truth. If you want to protect Jacob, to protect yourself, you have to confront him in a way he least expects. Mom. My disbelief felt like a shove through the sudden rush of courage her words had sparked. I can't do this alone. With each passing moment, I could see the direction shifting. The strands of my life were tangling, pulling tighter, knotting suffocatingly around each of us. A sudden grocery delivery truck rumbled past outside, its loud motor briefly interrupting the rising tension in our living room. And then, as if the universe was conspiring against our fragile moment, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a message from Tobias, its briefness an ominous shadow. "You should really prepare for what's coming." That my heart raced as I read it, the weight of his threat lingering like a ghost in the room. "He's watching us," I whispered, dread making my limbs feel heavy. "He knows we're onto him." "Then it's time," my mother said, her voice trembling with determination. "You are not the only one who must be brave." As the boundaries of our lives converged in this spiral of secrets and confrontations, I could feel the pull toward war, the inevitability of conflict growing like the swell of a dark tide. And yet, amidst the encroaching chaos, a familiar flicker of hope reminded me that courage could rise, even in shadows that threatened to consume us. Little did I know that the worst was yet to come, that the murky waters of our past would only deepen, pulling us closer to a revelation that could shatter our very existence. An unseen enemy closing in, waiting to strike when we least expected it. The evening sky bled deep shades of indigo as I sat in the thick silence of my living room, the air heavy with all that remained unspoken. My heart raced, tainted by the uncertainty that loomed relentlessly over us. Jacob's presence was reassuring, but I could tell he felt it too, the weight of impending dread settling like a stone in the pit of my stomach. "Do you think she was truly lost?" Jacob asked quietly, breaking the silence, his gaze fixed on the dimly lit corner where the photo sat patiently, waiting to reveal its secrets. "Eva, I mean." I could feel my mother's eyes, wet with unshed tears, piercing into the depths of my soul. "I wanted to believe that she wasn't," she admitted, her voice barely more than a whisper, trembling like the leaves in the gusts outside. "But life has a way of taking everything, and I was too young to protect her. To protect myself." I swallowed hard, realizing the weight of her sacrifice. What if confronting Tobias means more than just facing him? What if it means uncovering parts of you that you've buried? Her eyes flared with a flicker of defiance but quickly dulled under the weight of a terrifying thought. What if those parts lead to pain that's too much to bear? Determined, I gripped her hands tightly. "You won't be alone in this, Mom. You can face whatever darkness lies within with me. But first, we need to find out everything we can about Eva, her past with Tobias, and what really happened to her." The room felt charged, an electric anticipation igniting between us. It was a plan forged in uncertainty, but I clung to the frayed threads of hope binding us together. Jacob nodded solemnly, his ever-present quiet support telling me he was with us, ready to navigate this storm we were stepping into. The next few days unfolded in a blur, time merging into a dizzying chaos of phone calls, old newspaper clippings, and whispered conversations. We dug into the past, seeking remnants of Eva's life, each crumb a bloom of revelation that pieced together the convoluted puzzle. One evening found us huddled in the attic, the air thick with dust motes caught in the fading sunlight. My mother uncovered a box filled with letters and photographs, each item imbued with stories long lost. With cautious reverence, she pulled out faded envelopes, tracing the elegant handwriting that spoke of innocence and dreams unshadowed by the weight of loss. "Look," Jacob whispered, pointing to a photograph of Eva standing beside a vintage car, her smile bright and pure, a moment captured before it all spiraled into tragedy. She seemed so alive, so full of hope that I felt a strange kinship with this woman I had never met, a yearning to understand what choices she had made, and how they had entwined her fate with Tobias. The familiar dread ebbed slightly, replaced by an unfamiliar sense of connection, but as we delved deeper, it became evident that digging for the truth came with its own set of risks. Phone calls began to feel hostile, shadows lingered a little longer outside the window, and it was clear Tobias was monitoring our movements more closely than ever. One evening, just as we were preparing to have dinner, the doorbell rang. My mother shot up like a startled bird, and I braced myself, instinctively moving closer to Jacob, who stood protectively by my side. When she opened the door, a chilling formality swept into the room, ushered in by a figure cloaked in tailored darkness. Mr. Calder, he introduced himself, his voice smooth yet suffocating, sending ripples of ice down my spine. "I understand you've been asking questions." My mother echoed, her voice trembling. "Yes," he replied, his eyes assessing. "About your sister." And, well, your husband. Each word held a weight that seemed to drape a veil of fear across our small living room. Get out, I spat, feeling the surge of protectiveness flare within me. But he merely smiled, a predator aware of the power he wielded. You should reconsider, Mrs. Nolan. Uncovering those old wounds could lead to dire consequences, not just for you, but for your daughter. He stepped forward, his presence stretching like a shadow looming ever closer. What do you mean? Jacob interjected, stepping between us, his fearlessness oddly grounding. Consider this a warning, he concluded, spinning on his heel and leaving us standing in the chaotic silence that clung to the air like smoke. The door clicked softly shut behind him, but the chill lingered. I turned to my mother, noticing the way her entire demeanor had shifted, the strength shed so recently summoned now feeling fragile and waning. Mom, if that was a warning, it means we're getting closer, she said softly, yet I could hear the tremor in her voice. But it also means Tobias will do anything to protect his past. Anything. And that puts you both in danger. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Reluctantly, I glanced at the screen, my blood running cold at the sight of Tobias' name. He had sent me a single, chilling message, "You have something I want." And I'll take it at in that moment, the weight of everything came crashing down, the relentless hunt for buried truths, the stakes rising higher with every revelation, and the truth that shadows from the past could claw their way to the surface, threatening to drown us all. As I turned to my mother, desperation in my chest, I realized our lives were hanging in the balance, and the fight for our safety had just begun. But this was just the prologue to the storm arriving ahead. I could feel it curling in the shadows, lurking like a wolf waiting for night to fall. The night deepened, dark and heavy, seemingly swallowing us whole as I struggled against the tide of fear flooding my thoughts. The chill of Tobias' warning curled around my heart, tightening its grip. I needed to assemble my thoughts, to grasp onto whatever remnants of courage I could salvage in the face of this impending storm. With my knees drawn up to my chest and Jacob still standing protectively by my side, I turned to my mother. What do we do now? We can't let him control us, she cut me off, her expression weary yet resolute. He's already trying to manipulate us. There's no going back now. We need to decide how to confront this head-on. My heart sank. The world outside the cocoa-scented walls of our home felt like another universe, one embroiled in shadows and secrets. I held Jacob's hand tight, finding strength in his warmth, in the calm steadiness he radiated despite all that was unraveling around us. What does he want from us? Jacob's voice broke through the heavy silence, firm and unwavering. What pieces of our lives does he think he can bend to suit his needs? Your mother's legacy, Tobias had hinted, and now my mind raced with possibilities. Had he come for something worth more than gold, a piece of our history, our identity? My gaze flicked to the box tucked away in the attic, filled with letters and old photographs of my mother's past, remnants of a life I barely understood. It has to do with Eva, I stated, more to myself than anyone else. The fragments swirled around in my mind, coalescing into a singular, pressing thought. What if he believes her story can give him leverage over us? My mother's face paled, as if the very name of her sister conjured a haunting memory that lingered just out of reach. He may think that, she conceded, but it's our truth to own now. Perhaps if we confront that truth together, we can find our way forward. But we must be careful, it will expose every vulnerability we have. The words tumbled through the air, bulging with unwelcome gravity. Mom, confronting him, it means revealing everything, I murmured, each syllable tinged with hesitation. Every choice you made to shield me, every shadow that's haunted you, and every piece of our family's history will come back into focus. I know. Can we survive that? Jacob interjected, glancing between us, his voice carrying the weight of a challenge that loomed larger than ourselves. Can we withstand the fallout? In that stirring moment, I felt a quiet but undeniable fire ignite within me. Reflection gave way to action. Together, we can, I declared, my voice steady and resolute. We have to believe that knowing the truth, even the painful parts, is worth the price we might pay. We can't let Tobias dictate our lives. He doesn't own our past, and he certainly can't dictate our future. My mother held my gaze, her darkened expression lifting slightly as glimmering pride flickered behind her tear-stained eyes. You're right, my love. But, first, we need to prepare for what's to come. We cannot walk this path unarmed. The windows shivered with the rising winds outside, gathering momentum that mirrored the tumult brewing within us. The cascade of worries about Tobias, his secrets, his ulterior motives filled the corners of my mind like unwelcome guests. We had touched the surface of something much deeper, far more perilous than any of us had anticipated. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the house, pulling us from our collective reverie. It was not the polite kind, it was a hammering knock that thrummed with urgency. A chill of foreboding crept through me like frost. Jacob moved in front of us, a solid shield in the looming darkness. "Stay here," he murmured, his voice low yet steady, a sentinel ready to guard against whatever lay on the other side of that door. "I'll see who it is." "Jacob, stay." "I'll be right back," he insisted, a spark of determination pushing through the walls of worry. When he opened the door, I leaned closer, straining to hear what was said. "What do you want?" Jacob's voice held a deep, steady bite, his bravado tangible even as the fear wrapped around my heart like thorns. "I need to talk to you," came a heavy voice that sent tremors through the otherwise still air. "About Tobias." The ominous weight of that solitary name echoed within the confines of our living room, twisting an invisible knife deep into my chest. I could hear their hushed exchanges, but the words fell just beyond my grasp. A cold dread gripped me tighter as Jacob's face tightened in response. In an instant, he turned, urgency glimmering in his eyes as he beckoned me closer, and I rushed into the entryway. Just as I crossed the threshold, the somber figure stepped into view. It was a man, one whose gravity commanded immediate attention. Tobias' associate, whom I recognized, one of the very men I had glimpsed from the window. His hair slicked back, suit perfectly tailored, his every move exuding an unsettling sense of control. "Who are you?" Jacob demanded, his tone bracing into something more defensive as I joined him. "Let's not waste time," the man continued, ignoring Jacob's challenge completely. "I'm here to deliver a message from Tobias." My heart pounded viciously, now a thunderous echo against the eerie stillness. "Make it quick," Jacob replied, a fierce resolve coloring his voice. "The choice you're facing is not just a matter of family ties, it's your identity at stake. Tobias wants to strike a deal, one that could benefit all of you," he said, gesturing between us as if mapping out a future we had yet to comprehend. "Why should we ever trust him?" I shot back, a wave of anger coursing through me. "Because he has what you want," the man replied coolly, his words flowing like poison. "Information. Access to your sister's past and the deal she was involved in before her death can open doors you didn't even know existed. Court cases, scandals, hidden assets, everything he has, he'll freely share if you agree to certain terms." My breath hitched. The allure of knowing what had happened to Eva, of perhaps wielding that power against Tobias, danced dangerously in my mind. It was temptation wrapped in darkness, beckoning like a siren's call. "And what's the price?" Jacob challenged, his voice low but intense. "Your loyalty, your mother's allegiance to secure your futures and silence any unwanted inquiries into her life. Tobias knows you are close to unearthing the truth. He wants to make sure you're not a threat." "Threat?" I asked incredulously. "You think just by digging through our past we're a threat? You think we're powerless?" "We see you as a liability," he said, his indifference evident. "But don't fool yourselves, this can be negotiated. Align with us, and the burden of those shadows can slide from your shoulders." With that, darkness clawed its way into the room once more, wrapping around us in pulsating waves. "And if we refuse?" Jacob asked, a quiet fire sparking in his eyes. "You'll be buried beneath them." I stood frozen, the implications echoing through me. We could easily become casualties in this tangled web of deception, victims to Tobias' machinations. Each pulse of my heart drummed a rhythm of uncertainty, the air around us thickened with barely suppressed tension, fraying at the edges like a cloth worn too thin. All of this has only served to remind us who he truly is, I whispered, knowing full well the choices ahead would carve us into pieces. The past, once so neatly siloed by my mother and unwritten by me, had begun to expand into a dangerous future full of uncharted territory. We won't let fear rule us, we will take back our life. Don't be foolish, the man warned, his eyes narrowing. You think you can uproot the entangled strands of his empire and walk away unscathed? You should leave while you still can. The underlying threat hung in our air. I turned to Jacob, feeling the unbreakable bond we had forged flare bright within me. We refuse, I said firmly, aware of the enormity of the implications but unyielding. Then so be it, the man replied, his voice dripping with condescension, a finality hanging in his words. But don't say you weren't warned. With that, he turned on his heel, striding away with a final flick of his wrist. The air grew stagnant as we relished the weight of his words, unsure of what lay ahead but knowing, undeniably, that we had crossed a threshold there would be no turning back now. Are we ready for what's next? Jacob asked, his warm hand squeezing mine, anchoring me as I fought my rising fear. As ready as we'll ever be, I replied, summoning every ounce of determination that hid behind the fear. Well, confront him together. Well, uncover the truth that binds our lives, and we will emerge stronger for it. As I spoke, I felt the flicker of resolve blaze within me. It would be dangerous. It would challenge everything we once knew about ourselves and our family, but then what truth emerges without facing the darkness that fuels it? We had chosen our path despite the shadows, and now we would begin the treacherous journey toward redemption, love, and everything that lay on the other side. The path looming ahead shimmered like a horizon pregnant with the weight of discovery, beckoning me to finally unearth the truth that would reshape all that I believed about family, fate, and the love I sought. Together, we would tear through the veil obscuring our lives and emerge into the light, no matter how blinding it may be. And as the night wrapped around us, the darkness didn't seem as insurmountable anymore. We would carve our destiny, and with each heartbeat, we would stride boldly into the unknown, igniting a rebellion against the shadows that once held us captive. Our story was only just beginning.